The dust of Arizona territory swirled around Clara Porter's skirts as she stepped off the stagecoach into Mineral Park. Her heart pounded against her ribs like a frightened bird. The journey had been long from Boston to this mining town perched on the edge of civilization in 1878. She clutched her single valise and the crumpled letter that had brought her here, the ink now faded from her countless readings during the journey west. "Last stop, Mineral Park," the driver called, already unloading the mail sacks. Clara stood frozen, scanning the small main street with its wooden buildings. Men with weathered faces and dusty clothes glanced her way, some tipping their hats politely, others staring with unabashed curiosity. She was, after all, a new face and a female one at that in a town starved for both. "Miss Porter," she turned toward the deep voice, finding herself face to face with a tall man. His broad shoulders filled out a simple cotton shirt and his face was partially obscured by a wide-brimmed hat. This was him, Preston Keller, her husband-to-be. "Mr. Keller," she acknowledged with a slight nod, fighting to keep her voice steady. His photograph hadn't done him justice. He was more handsome than she'd expected, with strong features and eyes the color of a summer sky. But photographs couldn't show temperament, couldn't reveal character. "Welcome to Mineral Park." His voice was even, giving away nothing of his thoughts as he reached for her bag. When their fingers brushed, she flinched involuntarily. Something flickered across his face, surprise, perhaps even hurt. "The wagon's this way," he said, gesturing down the street. "Unless you'd like to rest at the hotel first." "No, thank you. I'd prefer to see where I'll be living." Clara straightened her back, determined not to show fear. She'd made her choice when she answered his advertisement for a bride. There was no turning back now. The ride to his ranch was mostly silent. Clara stole glances at his profile, noting the strong jaw, the way his hands held the reins with casual confidence. She'd heard stories about Western men, their roughness, their cruelty to women who were little more than property in these untamed lands. Her friend Martha had warned her against coming, had told horror stories of mail-order brides beaten or worked to death. "It's not much," Preston said as they crested a hill, breaking her dark thoughts. Below them stretched a modest ranch house with a barn and corrals. A small garden plot sat beside the house and cattle grazed in the distance. "But it's mine, paid for." There was quiet pride in his voice. "It looks." Clara searched for the right word. "Substantial." He gave her a quick sideways glance. "That's a careful word." "I'm careful with words, Mr. Keller." "Preston," he corrected gently. "We're to be married tomorrow if you're still willing." "Tomorrow, so soon?" Clara swallowed hard. "As agreed." When they reached the house, Preston helped her down from the wagon, his touch light on her elbow. Clara noticed calluses on his working hands, but he didn't grip her roughly as she'd feared. The house was simple but clean. A main room with a stone fireplace, a small kitchen area, and 2 doors leading to what she assumed were bedrooms. The furniture was functional, handmade but sturdy. "This would be your room," Preston said, opening one of the doors. "Until we're married, then." He cleared his throat. "Well, that's tomorrow's concern." Clara peered inside, a narrow bed with a patchwork quilt, a small dresser with a mirror. A window with actual glass panes looking out toward the mountains. "I thought you'd want some privacy," he added when she remained silent. "To settle in." "Thank you," she managed, surprised by the consideration. "I'll bring your bag and start supper. You must be hungry after your journey." Left alone, Clara sat on the edge of the bed and finally allowed herself a moment of panic. What had she done? Traveling across the country to marry a stranger, Preston seemed civil enough, but what would happen after the vows were spoken? Would the gentle facade fall away to reveal a tyrant? She unpacked her few possessions, 2 dresses besides the one she wore, undergarments, a hairbrush, a small Bible that had been her mother's. From the leather pouch sewn into her petticoat, she removed her emergency money enough for a stagecoach ticket back east if things became unbearable. The smell of cooking food eventually drew her out. Preston stood at the stove, stirring something in a cast iron pot. "I'm not much of a cook," he admitted. "Just beans and bacon tonight. Tomorrow we can go into town for supplies." Clara moved beside him. "May I help?" He stepped aside, giving her room at the stove. "Be my guest." She added salt and pepper from the small containers on a shelf, then found a few dried herbs hanging by the window. "You have a garden," she observed, "started it last year, thought if I found a wife." He trailed off, looking slightly embarrassed, thought she might appreciate having vegetables. The thoughtfulness of this gesture caught Clara off guard. Had he truly been planning for a wife's comfort all this time? They ate at a small table by the window, the silence between them broken only by the clink of forks against plates. Clara found herself studying Preston when he wasn't looking. His movements were deliberate, controlled. Nothing about him suggested violence, yet she remained wary. "Why did you answer my advertisement?" Preston asked suddenly. "If you don't mind my asking." Clara considered her response carefully. "My parents died last winter, influenza. The family home went to pay debts. I was working as a shop girl, but—" She looked down at her plate. "Boston holds painful memories now. I'm sorry about your parents. Thank you, and you, why advertise for a wife?" Preston's eyes met hers. "Loneliness, I suppose. A man needs companionship, and I want children someday." His gaze was direct but not demanding. "I built this place from nothing. Now I want someone to share it with." After dinner, Preston excused himself to tend to the livestock. Clara watched from the window as he moved about the yard, his lantern casting long shadows. She noticed how the animals responded to him, the horses nickering softly, the cattle moving calmly in his presence. Animals, she knew, were good judges of character. That night, alone in her small room, Clara lay awake listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the Arizona night. Coyotes howled in the distance. The wind whispered around the eaves of the house. And somewhere on the other side of the wall, Preston Keller slept the stranger who would be her husband. Morning came with golden light streaming through the window. Clara dressed carefully in her best gown, a dove-gray silk that had belonged to her mother. She pinned her hair up in a simple style, wishing for flowers to adorn it. A soft knock at her door. "Clara, are you ready?" She opened the door to find Preston in clean clothes, his hair still damp from washing. He'd shaved, and she noticed a small nick on his jawline. In his hand, he held a small bouquet of wildflowers. "I thought you might want these," he said, offering them with an awkward gesture. "For your hair, maybe." The unexpected thoughtfulness brought tears to Clara's eyes. She accepted the flowers, their vibrant colors bright against her gray dress. "Thank you. The preacher's waiting in town, unless you've changed your mind." There was uncertainty in his voice, giving her a clear chance to back out. Clara tucked one of the flowers into her hair. "I haven't changed my mind." The wedding was brief, conducted in the small church at the edge of town. A few curious townsfolk attended, strangers to Clara who offered congratulations afterward. The preacher's wife served as witness, giving Clara a warm hug and whispering, "Preston Keller is a good man, you've chosen well." "But I didn't choose," Clara thought. "Circumstance chose for me." They ate lunch at the town's only restaurant where the owner refused payment. "Wedding gift," the round-faced woman insisted, beaming at them. "We've been waiting for Preston to find himself a bride for years now." As they prepared to leave town, Preston stopped at the general store. "Wait here," he told Clara, disappearing inside. When he returned, he carried a small package wrapped in brown paper. Back at the ranch after they'd tended to the horses, Preston handed her the package. "A wedding gift," he explained. Clara unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a beautiful leather-bound journal and a fountain pen. She ran her fingers over the smooth cover, deeply touched by the gesture. "I noticed you like words," Preston said. "Thought you might want to write down your thoughts." "It's perfect," she whispered, fighting tears again. Why was he being so kind? It unsettled her expectations, made her uncertain. That night, after a simple wedding supper, came the moment Clara had been dreading. Preston cleared his throat as they finished washing the dishes. "It's been a long day," he said, "and you've traveled far. Perhaps you'd like to retire early." Clara steeled herself. "Yes, I suppose we should." Preston's eyes widened slightly. "Clara, he rubbed the back of his neck. "I want you to understand something. We're married now, yes, but I don't expect." He sighed, clearly struggling. "What I mean to say is, I know you don't know me yet. I won't rush you." Clara stared at him, not comprehending. "But the marriage will still be there tomorrow, and the day after." His voice was gentle. "I'd rather wait until you don't look at me with fear in your eyes." Relief flooded through her, followed quickly by confusion. "You would wait." "I would." He reached out slowly and took her hand, his touch light as a butterfly's wing. "You'll find I'm gentle enough, Clara, I promise you that." That night, Clara slept alone in what was now their bedroom while Preston took the small guest room. In her journal, she wrote, "He is not what I expected. I don't know what to make of this man who offers kindness when he could demand his rights. Is this a strategy to lower my guard? Or could he truly be as gentle as he seems?" Days passed into weeks. Spring bloomed fully across the ranch, and Clara found herself settling into a routine. She tended the garden, expanding it with seeds Preston purchased in town. She learned to cook on the temperamental wood stove, mastering bread that Preston praised extravagantly. They worked side by side during the day and talked by the fire in the evenings. Preston kept his word, never pressuring her. He slept in the small room, giving her space. But Clara found herself watching him more and more the way sunlight caught in his hair when he worked outside, the gentle way he handled newborn calves, the sound of his laughter when she told stories of her childhood in Boston. One evening, about a month after their wedding, a thunderstorm rolled in from the mountains. The rain hammered the roof while lightning split the sky. Clara stood at the window, watching the spectacular display. "It's beautiful," she said as Preston joined her. "Terrifying, but beautiful." "Like many things in the West," he replied. His shoulder brushed against hers and she didn't pull away. That night, the storm intensified. Wind howled around the house, and a particularly violent crash of thunder woke Clara with a start. Heart racing, she pulled her shawl around her nightgown and went to check the windows in the main room. Preston was already there, securing the shutters. He turned when he heard her, his face illuminated briefly by lightning. "Just a spring storm," he assured her. "The house has weathered worse." Clara nodded but didn't return to bed. Instead, she moved to stand beside him at the window. "I've never seen such weather. It'll pass by morning." He glanced down at her and something shifted in his expression. Slowly, telegraphing his movements, he reached out to brush a strand of hair from her face. Clara felt herself leaning into his touch before she realized what she was doing. Their eyes met in the darkness between lightning flashes. "Clara," he whispered, her name like a prayer on his lips. She stepped closer, guided by something she couldn't name. His arms encircled her, and she rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart beneath the thunder. They stood like that for a long time, not speaking, just holding each other as the storm raged around them. When Preston finally pulled back slightly, he tilted her chin up. "May I kiss you?" he asked, his voice rough with emotion. In answer, Clara rose on tiptoe, pressing her lips to his. The kiss was gentle at first, then deepened as thunder crashed overhead. When they broke apart, they were both breathless. "Stay with me tonight," Clara whispered. "Just to sleep. I don't want to be alone during the storm." That night they lay side by side in the bed that had been only hers, not touching except for their hands, fingers intertwined between them. Clara felt a strange peace settling over her, a certainty that had been missing since she'd stepped off the stagecoach. In the morning, Clara woke to find Preston already gone from the bed, the smell of coffee drifting from the kitchen. She found him at the stove, his back to her. "Good morning," she said softly. He turned, a smile spreading across his face that made her heart skip. "Good morning, wife." The word no longer frightened her. That day, as they worked together to repair storm damage to the chicken coop, Preston told her about his past, how he'd come west as a young man, worked as a cowhand on various ranches, saved every penny to buy this land. He spoke of his parents back in Ohio, his younger sister who'd married a shopkeeper in Denver. "I write to them every month," he said. "Told them about you in my last letter. My mother's eager to meet you someday." "I'd like that," Clara replied, surprised to find she meant it. That evening, Preston took her hand as they sat by the fire. "I have a confession to make." Clara tensed slightly. "What is it?" "When I sent for a bride, I never expected someone like you." His thumb traced circles on her palm. "You're educated, refined, I'm just a simple rancher." "Not so simple," Clara countered. "You're kind and thoughtful, you've been patient with me when many men wouldn't have been." "I want you to be happy here, Clara. I know it's not Boston. I don't want Boston," she interrupted. "I want." She hesitated, then gathered her courage. "I want you." This life we're building. The look on Preston's face was worth every mile she'd traveled, every fear she'd overcome. He pulled her into his arms, kissing her with a passion that sent heat spiraling through her body. That night, Clara willingly became Preston's wife in every sense of the word. His touch remained gentle, his concern for her comfort evident in every caress. Afterward, lying in his arms, she felt a contentment she hadn't known was possible. "I think I'm falling in love with you," she whispered into the darkness, his arms tightened around her. "I fell in love with you the moment you stepped off that stagecoach, looking so brave and so frightened all at once." Summer came to Arizona, bringing scorching days and the threat of drought. The work was harder than anything Clara had experienced in Boston, but she found satisfaction in it. Her hands grew calloused, her skin tanned despite her wide-brimmed hat, but Preston looked at her as if she were the most beautiful woman alive. In July, disaster struck. Preston was thrown from his horse while checking on cattle in the far pasture. Clara heard the riderless horse return, its panicked whinnying sending her running from the house. She found him a mile away, conscious but unable to stand, his leg bent at an unnatural angle. Somehow, she managed to get him onto the horse and back to the ranch. The doctor from Mineral Park confirmed what they already knew: a broken leg that would take weeks to heal. "You'll need to hire help," the doctor advised. "Can't run this place with him laid up." But hired help was expensive and their savings were limited. "I'll manage," Clara insisted after the doctor left. "We'll manage together." The next weeks tested her strength and resolve. Clara rose before dawn each day to tend the livestock before returning to care for Preston. She learned to drive the wagon into town for supplies. She negotiated with neighboring ranchers who offered assistance. Accepting only what they truly needed, through it all, Preston guided her with words, teaching her everything he knew about ranching. At night, exhausted, she would collapse beside him in bed, and he would massage her aching shoulders, murmuring praise and encouragement. "I never knew I married such a capable woman," he told her one evening as she checked the splint on his leg. "Neither did I," Clara admitted. In Boston, women aren't expected to do such things. "Do you regret it? Coming here?" She leaned down to kiss him. Not for a moment. By the time autumn painted the landscape in golden hues, Preston was back on his feet, though he still walked with a slight limp. The crisis had changed them both, deepening their bond, proving they could face hardship together. One crisp October morning, Clara woke feeling unusually tired. She'd been feeling strange for several days, queasy in the mornings, emotional at odd moments. When she mentioned it to Preston, a look of wonder crossed his face. "Clara," he said carefully, "could you be expecting—" The possibility hadn't occurred to her, but as soon as he said it, she knew. "I think I might be." The town doctor confirmed their suspicion. A baby would arrive in late spring. Preston's joy was boundless. He spun her around the yard when they returned home, then immediately apologized for being too rough. "You'll need to rest more," he fretted. "No more heavy chores. I'll hire that help now." Clara laughed at his concern. "Women have been having babies since the beginning of time, Preston. I'm not made of glass." But she couldn't deny the tenderness she felt watching him prepare for their child's arrival. He built a cradle, smooth and sturdy, that he placed beside their bed. He traded with a traveling merchant for soft flannel to make baby clothes. He even started building in addition to the house another bedroom for when their child grew older. "And for the others that might come along," he explained with a shy smile. Winter in Arizona wasn't as harsh as in Boston, but the cold nights had them huddled close by the fire. Clara's belly grew round beneath her loosened dresses, and Preston would often rest his hand there, marveling at the occasional kick or roll of their child. "What shall we name the baby?" Clara asked one evening as they sat together, her back against his chest, his arms around her. "If it's a boy, maybe after your father," Preston suggested. "You've told me he was a good man." Tears pricked Clara's eyes at his thoughtfulness. "David, yes, I'd like that. And if it's a girl?" Clara twisted to look up at him. "What was your mother's name?" "Margaret, but everyone calls her Maggie." "Then Margaret it shall be." As spring approached, Clara's confinement kept her closer to home. On days when the weather was fair, Preston would help her to a chair on the porch, where she could feel the sun and watch him work. Sometimes neighbors would visit, bringing gifts for the baby and staying to share news from town. Martha Jenkins, the doctor's wife, became a particular friend, offering practical advice about childbirth and motherhood. "Preston Keller's the talk of the territory," she confided during one visit. "The way he dotes on you makes the other men look bad." Clara smiled, watching Preston repair the corral fence. "He's a good man, better than I deserved." "Nonsense," Martha replied firmly. "You've been good for him too. Before you came, he was just work and more work. Now there's light in his eyes." The baby arrived on a perfect May morning after a long night that tested Clara's endurance. Preston stayed by her side throughout her labor, despite Martha's insistence that men usually waited elsewhere. He held Clara's hand, wiped her brow, and whispered encouragement as she struggled. When their son finally made his entrance into the world, announcing himself with a lusty cry, Preston wept unashamedly. "He's perfect," he breathed as Martha placed the swaddled infant in Clara's arms. "You're both perfect." David William Keller had his father's blue eyes and a tuft of dark hair that Clara was certain came from her side. He was sturdy and healthy, with a strong grip that caught Preston's finger and wouldn't let go. "I think he likes you," Clara murmured, watching the wonder on her husband's face. "I've never seen anything so miraculous," Preston whispered, "except perhaps his mother." The first months with their son brought new challenges and joys. Sleepless nights gave way to days filled with small discoveries: David's first smile, the way he tracked movement with his eyes, his growing awareness of the world around him. Preston proved as gentle with their son as he had been with Clara, readily changing diapers and walking the floor with a fussy baby to give Clara rest. They developed a partnership in parenthood as natural as their partnership in running the ranch. By David's first birthday, the ranch had prospered enough for Preston to hire a permanent hand to help with the cattle. The addition to the house was complete, and Clara had expanded her garden to grow not only vegetables but flowers that brightened their home. "I have something for you," Preston told her on the anniversary of her arrival in Mineral Park. He presented her with a small wooden box hand-carved with delicate wildflowers. Inside lay a gold locket. When Clara opened it, she found a tiny photograph of the three of them: Preston, herself, and baby David, taken when a traveling photographer had visited town the previous month. "So you'll always remember how it began," Preston explained as he fastened it around her neck. "Our family." Clara touched the locket, then reached up to cradle his face. "I remember everything, how afraid I was, how gentle you were. Are you still afraid?" he asked, his eyes searching hers. "Never." She stretched up to kiss him. "Not with you." That night, after David was asleep, they sat on the porch swing Preston had built, watching the stars appear in the vast Arizona sky. Clara rested her head on his shoulder, content in a way she'd never imagined possible when she'd first stepped off that stagecoach. "What are you thinking?" Preston asked, his arm warm around her shoulders. "I was thinking about choices," Clara replied. "When I answered your advertisement, I thought I was choosing the lesser of two evils: a strange husband in a strange land, or poverty in a city full of memories." Preston waited, patient as always. "But it wasn't like that at all," she continued. "Instead of the cruel man I feared, I found you. Instead of hardship, I found purpose. Instead of loneliness, I found love. You found me," Preston corrected softly, kissing her temple. "And I found everything I never knew I was looking for." As the moon rose over the mountains, casting silver light across the land that had become her home, Clara Keller knew with absolute certainty that her journey had led her exactly where she was meant to be: in the arms of a gentle cowboy, in a love story written across the wild Arizona sky. 2 years later, their daughter Margaret joined the family, followed by twin boys 3 years after that. The ranch grew alongside their family, becoming one of the most prosperous in the territory. Preston and Clara's partnership became legendary in Mineral Park, a testament to what could grow from the most uncertain beginnings when nurtured with patience, respect, and love. And every year, on the anniversary of her arrival, Clara would open her journal, the one Preston had given her as a wedding gift, and write down her memories, preserving their story for the generations to come. The story of a mail-order bride who expected cruelty but found a gentle heart, And the cowboy who taught her that love, like the western landscape, could be both wild and beautiful.